And it looks like we're live.
Yes. Good evening, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all again from Craig and Jane.
Of course.
With your wonderful psychic show. And tonight we're going to be talking about near-death experiences. So if you've joined us after we're live, stick with it because there's going to be all sorts of interesting topics. We'll cover all the things about near-death experiences, but particularly those that join us, please do send us and type in or prepare your stories too, because we want to talk about your experiences as much as what we've got to say. And we'll talk about, you know, the clinical or near-death experiences, plus what it's like to be with someone when they die, out-of-body experiences perhaps, and some of the proofs and the scientific sort of things people say one side or the other, and what the doctors say and things like that. So it should be an interesting evening, and we're going to say hi to everybody now.
Here we go.
So Nana, hi.
Hi from my home in Totton. Hi, Nana. Keith from Herefordshire. Good evening, Keith.
Hi there, Keith. Agility Bits, yes. Hi there
sunny
again.
Cornwall. Yeah, it's been beautiful and sunny
It's been
here
beautiful
today.
here, sunny-wise too, hasn't it?
Yep.
Fantastic it's been.
Patrice, hello from Germany. Hi, Patrice.
Joanne Tonkin, good morning. Craig and Jane from Adelaide, Australia.
Oh, good morning.
Yeah,
gosh.
very dedicated there in Australia.
Yeah,
you guys.
we'd love to go there.
Yeah. Tell your TV networks so we'll come over and do a Doris Stokes. We'll bring Doris Stokes' friends too.
Lorraine says hello from Wareham, Dorset. Hello, Lorraine. Good evening. I'll keep my glasses on, I think.
Meditation Chamber. Hi again from Warrington. Hi there.
Oh, Linda says, hi, I love you guys, sending good vibes from the US. We love you too.
We love everybody in the US except Harry.
Oh, don't say that. I like Harry.
Yeah, he's all right. Alison Welch saying, good evening from Old Shaftesbury down Dorset. Lots of love, Alison. Hi there. We get a lot of regulars again coming in. So if you follow this channel, don't forget, you can become a regular too. So click. While we're doing saying the hellos, click that little button if you just joined us after we've gone live, the little bell, and you'll get updates all the time.
Linda said, good evening, Craig and Jane from Cyprus. Good evening.
Good to see you. If you're just joining us, we're going to be talking about near-death experiences. So don't forget to prepare something to ask us questions. You can
try not
put
to,
your question in at any time as well.
Try not to come out of your body while we're on tonight.
You can put your question in at any time because Domenico will see them there and he can,
Susan
feed the questions to us.
Hi, Sue from Adelaide. Hi, Sue.
Oh, it's another one from Australia. Good, yeah.
Kim from Hedgen. Hi,
Kim. That's just around the corner.
When we come out lock out, we'll have to all meet up
lock
again.
Out, yeah.
We feel like we're logged out.
I think I prefer a bit of lock out rather than lock down. Brad Shepherd saying, hello guys, tried to catch you for a long time, hope for a personal message from you. Well, yeah, you can, Brad, if you've got a question, or you've got anything you want to add to the theme tonight, which is near-death experiences, you know, that's what we do pick up any proper questions. Deborah Blake saying hello from Fred, California.
Fred, California.
I think that's down near Blogs, isn't it? That place. Hello from Puerto Rico.
I've been to Puerto Rico. It's nice.
Hi, Craig and Joe from London. Someone's had a takeaway tonight, I see. Hello from Georgia. Georgia, America, I suppose. Or Georgia, Europe. Near Europe. Hi from Washington, Tyne and Weir. Aha, it's another Washington.
It's nice.
And sorry, that's Fresno.
Not Fresco.
Hello from Fred, California. Okay.
Sorry, that's Fresco.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it. Good afternoon from Missouri, USA, and it's evening here, actually, of course. Hello from East Kilbride in Scotland. Yes,
lovely.
I noticed a lot of my predictions have come true about the Scottish National Party. The ones I made in 2019 saying that they're going to be at each other's throats. And it does seem to be the case. And I said Nicola Sturgeon may well be kicked out.
Right, kindred spirit. Good evening, Jane and Craig from Harrow, Middlesex. Amber, hello from Texas. Hello, Amber. Ben M, hello from Plymouth.
So we all say the hellos first to let people get online before we start. Craig and Jane from Warwickshire. Teresa. Thank you. I like your shirt, Craig. What are these ones? Oh, you look. The shirt last week was the best one. These are just my normal. These come from Ireland, actually. They're quite nice.
The linen.
We did a show once and I had a white one on, and they thought we were in our pajamas. They thought.
No, that was in the States.
Yeah, in America. Hi, I love your pretty top, Jane.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Actually, it's a dress.
Okay. Yes. I see. Okay. I bought that. I seem to remember.
Did you? Now?
Under duress, I think.
Under duress, really? Well, I better put you under more duress this evening then.
Hi from Manchester, Kitty Whiskers. Oh, that's funny. We seem to get a lot of cats and dogs come on this show, don't we? Angela Locke saying you both look so well from Derbyshire. Thank you. I don't feel it, actually. I feel really tired today. Susan Pollard saying I've been missing the live chats because you set me alarm. 5:33 here in Adelaide. Gosh. Yeah, I know, 5:33 a.m. God, you would have to set your alarm, wouldn't you? Hello, beautiful moon here in Denmark. Oh, beautiful moon here. Yeah, it was incredible moon here as well. I was said to Jane when I came in, absolutely fabulous. We had the moon in one side and the sun on the other going down against a blue sky.
And a box of milk tray for me in the other hand.
Yeah. But it was absolutely beautiful tonight. Hello, Deb from New York. It's good to see you all. We're talking about near-death experiences, so have some questions and share your experiences with us tonight if you can. Hi from Middle Tennessee, says Renee. Hi from Colombia, Sri Lanka. Oh, wow. All the way from Sri Lanka.
There's a lot coming up.
Never been to Sri Lanka. I'd love to see Sri Lanka.
Kathy, hello from South Africa. Hello, Kathy.
Got close to Sri Lanka because I went to the other side in India where Hanuman's supposed to build the bridge.
Fiona, hi from Melbourne, Australia.
Kathy Kipps, hello from South Africa. Yes, lots of people follow us from South Africa, I believe. Hello from the Isle of Wight Festival, 1970.
Hey, man.
Yeah, I was there. Yes, I loved it.
And he still is.
Dylan and all the rest. And
He still is.
I still am. My brain stayed there, I think. Yeah. I didn't want to leave. Desolation Row, I remember, was there. Hello from Ireland, Kim Joseph. Yeah. Yes, that was quite an experience, Isle of Wight Festival. Hello from Swindon, Lola Smith.
Little pussycats.
Yeah, well, they'll say the cats and dogs followers. A man and his dog, plus a woman and her cat, you know. And here we go with our topic tonight, which is near-death experiences. And like I say, do put your questions in put your experiences, because Domenico is working in the background. He'll pick them up, and we'll have an intermission tonight too, in which we'll talk to Domenico afterwards, if he's still alive afterwards, to talk about near-death experiences. So near-death experiences, NDEs. It's when you know what it's about, because it's when somebody has often been resuscitated from death or brain death, you know. So it's become really, hasn't it? I mean, you were a nurse, you must have seen it probably happening in the hospitals.
Well, I did. One story I've got in mind, a boy was unconscious, taken down to the theatre, and he talked about when he came round that there was a shoe on the top of the hospital on a ledge. There's no way that child would have known that. And the physician, the surgeon, was so intrigued by it, he actually went right up the rooftop and found the shoe.
Yeah, there's a famous story that was in the stories by Raymond Moody. I think Raymond Moody was the first one to talk about this in his Life After Life, I think he called the book. It was two. And he talked about a woman called Maria who saw when she had a near-death experience. So she basically, she was brain dead. They couldn't resuscitate her. And she claimed that when she was under, that there was a plimsoll on a ledge on the hospital outside, and she saw this when she came out of her body. You know, so she saw this on the ledge,
just like the little boy. Then
Yeah, same, very, very similar, same
Yeah.
story, really. So this is why it's so interesting, because this was a classic story, and yes, and they knew that the position of the shoe could not be seen from her window or anywhere nearby or from outside the hospital. They had to actually look for it. They found it, and it was one of those examples that, you know, when a person is on the operating table, they die on the operating table. The brain is dead. And there's lots of reasons that people could argue that it's not, and I'll tell you some of those later. But it meant that, you know, how there was proof. You know, here was proof.
Most of the doctors say it's hallucinations. Skeptics will say, and they're on about the serotonin in the brain, and that, but it's not, because they say that they must have a memory of their relatives when they see different relatives. But a child too wouldn't take in relatives that had died, say, about 20 years ago or anything like that. A 2-year-old.
Some of the proofs, some of the strong proofs have come from children.
Yeah.
In fact, there was another case, just keeping on some of the cases as well. That there's a woman called Pat Reynolds, I think her name was, back in 1991. And she was having an operation that they had to do on her brain. And in order to do this operation on the brain, they had to freeze her. Actually, she had this form of surgical freezing, in which they freeze her down to a temperature so cold that the brain doesn't function. And then they had to stop her heart in order to do this really delicate surgery. And to check there was no brain patterns whatsoever, they were scanning her brain as they did this. And they put some sound in her ears that made a sort of bleep sound all the time. And when they put that in, if she was alive or hearing the brain, her brain was receiving the signals, it would show, because they'd hear the sound, you see. So you'd be able to trace it. They could prove right the way through this this surgery, that she was completely brain dead. And yet, when she came out, she said she had an out-of-body experience, and she repeated the conversations that the surgeons had, and she also described this strange bone saw for cutting off the top of her skull.
Yes.
It was a particularly odd shape and a strange thing, which she couldn't possibly have known about. And lots of little details like this. And they knew she was brain dead because they were testing it all the time while the operation was going on, that she was brain dead. You see, so because her brain would have picked up the sound resonance, you know, a loud sound. They said it was about the sound of a lawnmower going by. So it's quite a loud sound, just to check that she was completely brain dead.
I mean, I can remember coming out my body and actually floating up to the ceiling, looking down, and I could feel that I was looking at my body, and I felt my consciousness in the corner, and I thought, what am I doing here? And I panicked, and I came back in my body, and then I came out again, and I felt at peace, and then I came back. And it's like nothing exists around you. It's just your mind and consciousness.
This is the time when you're talking about. This is the time when we first met, wasn't it? And you were because you had another experience then. I seem to remember you saying at the time when you came out of surgery.
No, that's another time. I can remember actually seeing my stepfather leave his body when he died, and all I can tell you, it was an outline of a bright green fluorescent light, and it suddenly came up and went through the ceiling. And I had my mother there, and my son, and I couldn't tell anybody because it happened so quick. It was the actual outline of a body, and I wasn't a umbilical cord or anything. It's an outline, and it floated up so carefully up to the ceiling in a bright fluorescent green light.
Yeah, you always say about that green light. So what did that look like then? Describe it. I mean, it was...
Okay. Well, a bright green light, fluorescent green light, and it had yellow around the outside of it.
What, the shape of the body?
The shape of the body, exact shape. There was nothing else in between, because some people say, oh, you're on a umbilical cord and you go to spirit, but it was the outline of the body, and it rose like that. The inner body came out and rose up to the ceiling. And because he had an oxygen mask on at the time, and my mother thought he was still alive. And I said, Mummy, he's gone.
Yeah. I remember when my granddad died, you were talking about that. I mean, these are just as interesting, these ideas, and you can share your ideas with us too, if you've been with anybody that's died. I mean, I was not with my granddad when he died, but he was absolutely so adamant to me when I went to see him. He held my arm. because he'd gone through some pretty bad surgery and things. He held my arm and he said, Craig, you must never, ever, ever fear death. He said, you know, this is a man that's dying. He said, I was laying here in the bed, and it was when he used to be in Nigeria and had been a surveyor in Nigeria, and used to go into all sorts of places where there'd be no white people whatsoever or had ever been there, and had some incredible stories about it. And he saw his guide, his scout guide, that used to help him through the jungles, came to him. Bovril, he called himself, because they used to wear the sackcloth. They used to wear the clothes from the sackcloth that came in, and if it had English words on it, it was good. So he had a suit made with the word Bovril on it.
Oh, lovely.
So he used to call him Bovril. I mean, they were like that in those days. But Bovril came for him, and he said, and he took me my bed, and I floated off in the bed, and he took me all the way through all these other worlds. He said it was like so awake and so bright, and his eyes were sort of showing testimony to the fact that he'd seen something was really wonderful. And of course, that naturally stayed very much in my mind as somebody that, it was a brilliant near-death experience. Really, to be
Tim's one. Oh.
Okay, so Tim Gideons is saying, when I was 6 years old, I fell into the deep end of a swimming pool and was under the water, unable to swim. I saw bright light appear in front of me, and a voice said, "Don't panic, everything is okay."
So you could have gone over, couldn't you? You could have died.
I think we do get a sort of an inner voice and a spirit voice that tells us that. I mean, I was in a car accident, and it happened so fast, and you see a whole life flash before you, because a lot of people talk with their near-death experiences that you get this moment where you see everything, and for me, I did. The world completely slowed down. No, I wasn't in a near-death experience, because obviously but that moment before you go into a terrible... No, it wasn't a time lapse or anything. I just saw everything, the whole life, like it was all there, all at once. Pow! The whole lot.
I wish you could see everything now in housework.
Yeah, trying to remember simple things. It gets harder. But no, these are amazing things, and thanks for sharing that with us, because this one of the things about near-death experiences, which a lot of people say gives it credibility, is that so many people have similar type of experiences. I mean, we get this idea of the tunnel of light, don't we? We get this idea of meeting people on the other side and going to another world of some sort. There you meet, sometimes people describe meeting like spirit guides or angelic
people
beings.
Do see loved ones. They definitely do.
Yeah, and you see loving presence. The people talk about a loving presence. Some describe it as God. And then we meet the dead. We meet the people we love over there. And there's this feeling also of connectedness with everything. People that come back from a near-death experience talk about this idea of connectedness, this universal love, and also then the disappointment of having to come back to this world with all its troubles. So that the idea that there's a story, that there's a story to our death, kind of gives it, takes it away from this idea that it's the brain being chaotic at the end of life.
Pet GB.
Hi, Craig and Miss Jane.
Oh, thank
Missy
you.
Jane. Just finished reading your book, What to Do When You Are Dead. Yeah. Got next book ready to read tonight. I've had an NDE too. Great subject. Namaste. Yes, in fact, funnily you should say that, because I happen to have a copy of that book with me here tonight. Yeah. What to Do When You're Dead. It comes with a free picture taken by Domenico on the front. So buy the book and get the picture free. And that'll tell you all about this type of topic in great detail, not just the near-death experiences, but all the evidence that we have that we can bring together as a whole that can give us, I think, absolute empirical proof that there is life after death. So, Catherine is saying, do you want to do this one?
You
Hi from Ireland. I didn't have a near-death experience, but I did have a head injury, almost lost my life. I saw wonderful light around the people helping me. It was amazing. Felt love and strength.
Yeah. See, a lot of skeptics will say that's a head trauma. I've had the same when I fell down the stairs once, banged my head, the whole room lit up in a bright light. And that would mean to me that it's not your time to go over if you had a bright light like that. It's
A lot of people
interesting.
will say that the experience of the near-death experience, some people would have argued, oh, it's the brain being starved of oxygen. But if you see people who have their brain starved of oxygen, it's a fuzzy sort of experience. It's a muffled type of consciousness. But they talk about having an experience that is more real than real life. You know, it's like so
It changes
powerful.
people's lives.
It changes people's lives permanently.
Well, Tiger Isaacs changed his life. He was the guy that had
Well,
the hard rock.
Yeah, that's kind of another story, isn't it? But he saw Sai Baba came and saved him and came and pulled him back into life, didn't he? And then there's a number of fascinating stories around all that. Oh, good, John. It's a patron. Thank you, John. Yeah, I've seen you on the patron pages. Hi, Craig and Jane. Is it known for people who come out of NDEs to be a different or more enlightened person afterwards?
It is.
Or even with new abilities?
They do. It changes their life when somebody's had a near-death experience, because all of us think, why are we here? Why are we here? What's the reason? But when you have that, it's suddenly life isn't an illusion anymore. Life has a meaning to it, doesn't it?
And a lot of people have claimed to have psychic powers when they come out of a near-death experience. And I think I can understand that being the case, because it's opened your mind,
enlightened them
to a whole new way of seeing the world.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I was reading, a lot of people also get psychokinesis, you know, which PK, which is when you move objects, you know. You know, when you get psychokinesis, and they find that if you get a whole gathering of people at meetings and things who have had near-death experiences, all the machinery tends to go wrong, you know, because they're all kind of got this energy change. And so I'm sure, John, I'm sure that with it, that it must really open your mind. I mean, if you've had an experience like that, you will not see the world in the same way again. It's like you'll see it with new eyes.
Yeah. It makes a spiritual meaning to everything, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I've been up against the skeptics. I mean, one of the biggest skeptics with all this was Susan Blackmore. Do you remember? And I went on a number of shows and I've argued. Well, no, she's one of the leading people that tears this whole idea apart.
Her son believes in aliens. That she's a strange woman.
But she was a kind of unusual person as well. But she's the main skeptic about these things. And if you read her writings, Dying to Believe, I think one of hers is, these, you know, I mean, it's all right putting a skeptical case, but they go to the extremes with it, that they undermine these experiences to the point you think, well, these people have life-changing experiences and they're dismissing it as if it shouldn't be even talked about.
Yeah.
And it's complete nonsense.
It's the skeptics that's in denial.
Yeah, but even from a psychological point of view, what is going on with these people that they should have such a life-changing experience? I mean, one of the things they say is they've done some experiments on rats, for example, and they sedate rats, and then they stop their hearts, right, and measure their brain patterns. And just before it goes into brain death, when the heart stops and the brain knows that it's going to die, it gets a huge burst of electrical activity. And what they're saying is that these near-death experiences don't happen when the brain's dead. They either happen just before you've died or just after you've died. You've come back again. So they're saying it's a burst of electrical activity in the brain that we misunderstand as being it's a natural survival massaging our fears.
They're more or less saying it's hallucination.
So they're more or less saying it's hallucination, and they're saying that it's caused by this massive spike in brain activity. And the people like Susan Blackmore and others put this argument. That's what we're looking into. But the thing is, you see, the person doesn't get a sudden burst of irrational activity in the brain that you would get. Maybe things could happen very fast and time could be confused. But these experiences happen like a normal experience with a beginning, middle, and an end. Often very similar, some say, to the idea of the hero myth, where the hero goes off on a journey, comes back as a changed person, you know. So this, I mean, I don't want to get too much into the skeptical side of it, but there's a lot of skeptical arguments about it. But I don't think they stand up to scrutiny when you really start looking at them. And you know, these people, they have these experiences, And if you've had an experience like that, nothing's going to convince you otherwise.
Nana says that the veil between the two worlds is getting thinner now. Do you think that the normal person, we will be able to see spirits go out of the body on death? Well, I did, didn't I? I explained I saw my stepfather.
Yeah,
I saw it.
And I think she's asking, does she think generally
I think it depends.
that people are beginning more open to the idea of connecting with the spirit? I mean, I think they are. I mean, within spiritualism, the first opening to the spirit world was pretty dramatic, the physical mediumship and all sorts of things like that. Now it's less dramatic; it's more mental mediumship. But I think more people are naturally experiencing a connection with the next world.
Well, ordinary people are.
Yeah, and I think the more we change the more we get away from this super skeptical society,
well, they
I
don't
think the
know.
more we actually can open our perception.
Well, even scientists don't know all the answers. They think they do, but they don't.
Well, they've got a belief agenda, just like religion's got a belief agenda, and it's often, like I said, with those experiments and things, they're so blinkered to the idea that consciousness could survive death. True, it does require extraordinary proof. That is true from a scientific point of view. It requires extraordinary proof, but it doesn't mean you have to reject it all. I mean, these surely must be some of the most important things to study ever, and yet they don't. Oh, thanks, Pet GB, for doing a I can't remember what you call them when you pay a payment. Thank you for that. That's very kind of you to do that. It's appreciated. So, Lola Smith.
What if you're a loner with no family and nobody loves you in this life who greets you? Well, you must have had some family. Even if somebody was adopted or fostered, there would be somebody that would come and greet you.
Yeah, there would be. And even if you didn't know anybody in this life whatsoever, and everybody does.
I can remember an old lady.
You still have your people that you know
that came back to life. She died and she said she saw an angel. And I was in the room with her. And then she looked up and said, the angel has come for me. She didn't have anybody, really didn't have anybody. And she went so beautifully with a smile on her face. But I definitely felt a presence. I didn't see an angel, but I definitely felt presence in that room.
In the nursing times, was
yeah.
it? Yeah, because you must have seen a lot of people die.
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
And most people that have worked as nurses and doctors usually come out of it thinking there must be something else.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they see it. Patricia saying,
I read from 2 people who had near-death experience. They both said they are now super sensitive to sound. The woman has to wear earplugs now when vacuum cleaning because she cannot stand the noise anywhere. I've not heard that one before.
That might be the case. I don't know. Maybe there's a physical thing to it as well. That sounds to me like a physical type of thing, doesn't it? But certainly people talk about becoming psychically more sensitive. And there's a lot of interest in it now, of course. I mean, I read that book, Proof of Heaven, by Ibn Alexander, who was a neurosurgeon.
Yes.
And he'd studied in places like Harvard and places like that. A really interesting read, actually. I was a bit annoyed because he had exactly the same cover as one of my editions of What to Do When
with
You're
the
Dead.
butterflies
on.
with
the butterfly on it. Exactly. Somebody copied it wasn't his fault. I wrote to him and said, "Look, someo's copied the cover."
I think Nana said she had a book like that, Butterflies.
But it was a really good book and well worth the read. And he had these sort of experiences where he was kind of had a guiding sort of fairy-like, angel-like figure, and would go. He was out unconscious for a long period of time too. Yeah. Well worth the read. But he looked at his medical records afterwards. Being a neurosurgeon, he looked at his medical records, and there was no way he could have had those experiences so intense and so bright in such a long period of time.
Alison,
so he's one of the best proofs out there at the moment.
Alison, I'm very sorry you lost your husband last year. He had a heart attack in front of her, and she felt his spirit leave his body because she came all over peaceful, and we've been together for nearly 40 years. Well, that just proves the love there, doesn't it?
I should say so.
And I mean, nothing's worse than losing somebody in front of you.
Yeah, well, losing anybody full stop. But I mean, that's particularly
especially
tragic,
lockdown, lockdown.
Yeah. And I think you do get a feeling. I mean, when people die, I mean, we've had lots of interesting things happen, haven't we, when people have died? Clocks stopping, smells. I mean, this house just filled with a thick smell of jasmine when my dad died, didn't it?
Yes.
I mean, it didn't have nowhere. It was everywhere, consistently the same in every room. A very odd thing.
Well, I sat with somebody that was dying cancer, and they were friends of the family, and his mother left the room, I think just to have a break, and as she left, he actually died, and I could smell all this burnt toast. And when I came home about 4 o'clock in the morning, Craig said he could smell burnt toast on me.
I had it here as you had it there. It was strange.
And the clock stopped.
Yeah, because you went to
at 4
visit and
o'clock.
I stayed home, didn't I?
Yeah.
Babysat. So as we get these strange feelings, that make you think that there's more than makes you think. To me, it's absolutely convincing that there's something more beyond death. But how do you prove it to the scientists? I think the near-death experiences are fantastic in that we've got all that medical equipment measuring the brain as a person dies. I mean, it's like all the top end of equipment. And so I think it's going to give us enough proof in the end of the day that it's going to really even start to convince some of the scientists, though they're desperate to disprove it all the time.
Yeah. Do you want to read this one, Keith Sparrow? Not Captain Sparrow, Keith Sparrow.
Keith Sparrow, arr, he says, arr. Do you think current research into NDEs will eventually have an impact on the scientific community?
I hope it does.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a long time, though, don't you?
Yeah.
Because there is such a fierce resistance even to the study of these topics, really. I mean, it's like, they're so terrified that any of it can be proven to be real. I mean, even telepathy has had one hell of a battle with the skeptics. And there's a thing called Occam's razor, right, which is a philosophical idea that if you're faced with a whole load of complicated answers to something, usually the simplest answer is the correct one. And actually, I think the fact that their life consciousness continues after death does seem to be the basic, simplest answer to all these things. But they just will not even consider it and consider that all consciousness is just produced by the brain. When we're dead, that's it. We go into blackness. It doesn't matter because we don't know any different anyway. Shouldn't fear it. But there's nothing beyond this life.
Of course, I think somebody on there said about, do animals greet them near death? I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
If you had a favourite, I had a man that lost a dog. He had, what do you call them? Oh, it's an Irish Wolfhound. And he was so distraught. He came all the way down from Scotland to see me, and his dog did come through to him. And he said he saw his dog because he was nearly given up on life and that made him reassured that his dog would be waiting for him.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand a scientific person hearing a story like that or any of these stories and think, dogs coming to meet you. This surely must be some form of fantasy. I can understand how people
but
could
it's
think
not,
like,
it's the
but
truth.
the fact is, it's not. And I don't think this is just based on what people want to believe, or there might be some of that sometimes connected with some of these stories. I mean, there's been fake ones. There was a book or something that came out about the boy who came back from heaven. It became a big bestseller, and there's all over the press, all on Oprah Winfrey and things like that. And then he eventually says that he was lying.
Isn't that dreadful?
It was a complete lie. And what a sin
Isn't that
awful?
awful?
Isn't it? What a sin. And yet, but most of the stories are consistent, even from people, they come from very intelligent people, just like that Eben Alexander that I mentioned about, who's a neurosurgeon, and yet it comes also from very ordinary people. They seem to get the same stories,
Tim said, I've heard of people who've had a near-death experience that were met by their pets, right? That's true.
Yeah, lots of people have said to me when I've spoke, because sometimes when you do mediumship and things, not so much when you do it on the phone, but when you do it face to face like Jane does and things like that, when I used to do as well. I mean, you have time afterwards to have a cup of tea sometimes and a chat with the people.
Yeah.
And people tell you their stories about what happened, And some of these stories are, when deaths happen and they talk, because we're mediums, they can talk to us about things they might not be able to talk to with their friends. They get some wonderful stories of proofs that they've had. And particularly when you start talking to other, and you're in spiritualism and talk to other spiritualists and things, it's just very, very, it's almost like it's hard to believe, but it's the truth.
Well, it's like looking over your shoulder, leaving the planet, leaving the earth, and then you turn around, you're leaving, you know, you're going to a better place.
Yeah. I mean, I found it hard to accept all these things when I first started getting very interested in mediumship and started to develop, because I thought, surely it can't be like this. This is just too good news, isn't it? It's just, you know, surely people are fantasizing about this. This is tea and biscuits in heaven, you know.
Tea and biscuits in heaven.
But when it comes to it, you know, it does seem to be the case, you know, that
isn't it wonderful though they come back and give us proof.
Yeah.
And people that have near-death experience, sometimes it can be caused through stress, trauma, all different emotions. But then it changes you when you've had a near-death
and when
experience.
I did all the research for what to do when you're dead, you know, I mean, that I went into sort of so much. I looked at all the cultures of the world, you know, and when you start looking into it, you think, blimey, you know, when you take all this proof as a whole, you know, when you bring it all together, and there's a good there's a solicitor that's put the case, you know, to say that if you take the evidence as a whole, it's a proven case, you know, it's just as if you would in a court of law. So yeah, it was fascinating. Not only is it amongst modern day people and all these ideas and near-death experiences where people have gone through surgery and things, but it's been there right to the beginning, right back. I mean, there was even the stories in Rome of the soldier who was pulled off the funeral pyre, you know, and he'd had a near-death experience, and it's in old classical stories. It's in the old text. Sorry, I'm going too long.
Dylan, 2 weeks before my gran passed from dementia, she was sitting in a care home and she said, "My mum and dad are here. Are you ready to go?" I believe they were there getting ready for her passing. And that's, I've heard people seeing the parents.
I mean,
that's beautiful, isn't it? That's really beautiful.
I mean, in our family too, lots of stories of people that have come at the time of the death. You know, my sister, she said that her husband saw his dad was in the room. I remember I was talking to a friend on the phone as he was dying, and he saw Sai Baba stood in the room. You know, they had the phone by him as I was talking to him as he was dying, you know, but remotely, like he was in tears because he saw it had come to help him and take him over. So someone comes for us, you know, someone comes for us, whether it be someone we love or like that other lady who said something there about that she, you know, if you don't have anybody in this life who's going to come and get you, someone will come for you, someone that you will recognize, someone that
and
is
it's not
very,
the debt collector, not
creditors in my case.
Catherine, she's put, "Thank you, Jane, for saying it wasn't my time. 2 days before the accident, I was learning about angels and was told I wouldn't be back to the class. I ended up with 29 stitches in 10.
We're reading from here.
I know.
No, don't read them from there, Jane, because that's wrong. Sorry, I'll have to change that. So thank you for the wonderful live streams, Craig and Jane. It's become a regular part of my Saturday morning routine. Well, thank you, Neil. That's very good of you to do that. And also you've given a donation, I see there.
Yeah, thank you.
You don't read the ones coming in through.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's just the people can't see them.
It's just want to help so many people.
Yeah. But Domenico can put that one up if he spotted it. Diana says, "I've had a near-death experience where I met with my deceased grandmother on the other side. I was conscious of going through a tunnel with roaring sound. She gave me info that was later validated."
Yeah, you hear that people go through a tunnel of light. And this is where the scientists will say that it's a reaction to the brain shutting down the organs.
They talk about the temporal lobes firing. So this is this idea where if rats get this burst of electricity brain activity before you switch them off their heart, therefore humans have this burst of brain activity, which somehow translates into a complete lucid experience of meeting people, of floating outside the body.
Come back to me, Craig. Come back.
I mean, to me, it sounds like that would be if you had that, it'd be almost like having. I'm sure there'd be bursts of electric activity. Maybe as the brain is, as you're leaving the body, you would get something like that.
Well, I think it's like animals, really. You know, animals know when it's the near death and time to go, because they go in a corner somewhere to be quiet, don't they?
Yeah.
Rabbits, dogs,
Yeah.
cats.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's the
Our
same
cats
for
used to do that,
same
didn't
for
they?
humans, really. They do know, and they're ready. They're ready to surrender and let go.
I think another thing that people say is that at the point of death, the whole, like my granddad's experience there, the whole thing of fear and pain and the
That's
rest of it
nice.
is pushed aside. I think we transcend fear and all
You
the
surrender,
potential
Craig.
horror
You
of
surrender,
thinking of
let
death.
go.
Yeah.
Linda says, I was with my dad when he passed away, and in his last minutes he was saying, "Come on, Patch, I found you, good boy." Patch was our dog from 45 years ago. Isn't that lovely? That the animals waited to greet him.
Yeah. There's a lot of interest, isn't it, in the idea of animals coming for you.
I think
mean,
it's lovely.
a lot of people have said that the first experience they get when they go in a near-death experience it must be the same for death itself, is that the animal comes running ahead across the field,
lovely.
sort of thing, you know.
Yeah, nice.
There's always this idea also of like passing through a barrier of some sort too, like you go through the gate, the garden gates people describe, or the pearly gates even. But that is something I think the whole thing is partly symbolic but partly real at the same time. It's like, here's a special place that
You're
we've got to
talking
go
about
through.
gates. Before my grandmother passed, she saw the gates of heaven open up, and she saw Jesus put his hand out to her, and then she passed. And then when she died, we had the gates of heaven on her coffin, because it meant such a lot to her.
Yeah, and I think people see they're religious, but that's something I also addressed in What to Do When You're Dead as well, about the different people will tend to see a religious figure connected with their understanding of what their beliefs were in this life. So some people might see Jesus, some might see their guru, some
Craig
might
will see food.
Yeah, see food. They might see whatever their religious background is. And I think that is partly that we experience when we go to the next life something like a symbolic representation at the same time. It's like the form that we see is dependent also upon how we understand the word, because we're going into a world of like mind in a way. But that's a whole new story, which I address in the book.
Right, Twilight. I had a near-death experience, heroin, OD. My life flashed before me. I was out of my body before I died, watching myself, said give up, and felt a presence was in the corner of the room. I heard my name like a flash. I was in my body.
Well, thank God you came back again. I mean, hopefully it's helped you get over the addiction, and because perhaps that can also help. People go through quite a few revolutions when they go through these type of things, and can make a new start. I mean, I had friends that died from overdoses too, and dreadful. But
it's very brave of you to share that. With
thank
us
you for sharing that.
That's really good. And pleased you're well.
And I'm sure, like you said, there's a presence in the corner of the room, probably someone that loves you from the spirit side, probably some family member you might not have even recognized, or maybe a guiding angel or a guiding helper, because they don't want you over there. They want you here, working your life out and doing your karma and doing whatever we have to do in this life to become full human beings.
And obviously you had somebody looking after you, and it wasn't your time to go. So thank goodness.
Yeah. Here comes Boo. We might see him on screen in a minute.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. Catherine Karan.
Yes.
Thank you, Jane, for saying it wasn't my time 2 days before the accident. I was learning about angels cards and was told I wouldn't be back to the class. I ended up with 29 stitches and 10 staples.
Gosh, horrific, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, these are spiritual experience with a real clout, aren't they?
Yeah,
really.
And it's like somebody suffered like that and it wasn't their time to go. And I mean, that's quite a traumatic thing to go through, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that must be a very special person, Catherine, to come through that. And you definitely were touched by the angels, my dear.
And of course, these stories are helpful for everybody because they help us to, I mean, mediumship will give you proof of life after death, but these other stories, these things that people tell us about, these incredible experiences must be reassuring for people. You don't have to have belief for it, really, do you? I mean, it's about experience. It's about knowing that these things are beyond religion. These things they transcend religion and belief systems and, and all the rest of it, and I think give real proof that we do go on. And even though it's challenged a lot by some scientists, not all scientists are skeptics.
You have to have an open
But
mind.
of course, but then the louder voices tend to get to the top and often get, shout out everybody else. But I think there is in these things really is proof of heaven, and proof of the continuation of the soul after death. So Nana's saying, can your spirit leave your physical body before physical death in the body? In other words, can and does the body still function on its own without the spirit present?
Well, they say when you die, your fingernails still grow for at least 24 hours.
I think Nana's talking more about out-of-body experiences, isn't she? I would say yes, because I've had that experience myself. I've had experiences where I've been outside of the body, particularly when I was a teenager. And apparently a lot of people, some of the reports about that, often these things do happen to people when they're teenagers and puberty and times like that, just as psychokinesis, moving objects often happens at that time. Often poltergeist activity is associated with somebody going through that period in life. And I think it particularly does happen with out-of-body experiences too. And mine wasn't particularly pleasant at first because I was absolutely sweating when it happened. I came back in. It was like coming back like a whiplash. It was coming. You came in so fast, but tremendously real. It's happened not often, but when it does, you know it. Do you think your energy stroke soul?
So who's from, Craig?
From Laura. Hiya, Laura.
Laura.
Laura, yeah. I always call you Laura, don't I?
It's Laura.
Laura comes into the, I think she comes into the chat rooms, into the Zoom meetings. Do you think your energy soul remains your energy soul forever?
I'm sure it does.
Yeah, kind of.
Energy is all kinds of forms of things, isn't it? Energy.
Yeah, I mean, the universe will eventually go, but energy can neither be created or destroyed, they say, don't they, in physics? And I think also consciousness can neither be created or destroyed. It's like it's there always. Whether our personality exists forever is another question. I think it's a bit, some describe it in the end that what happens, it's a bit like if you take sugar or salt and you dissolve it into water, the sugar or the salt is gone, but if you taste it, it's still there. So nothing is lost, but it's taken a new form. And I think when we progress in the spirit world, I think eventually our attachment to the personalities that we have now becomes less and less and less. I don't know if I would need to be this person for all eternities.
Thank goodness.
67 years.
So thank goodness.
But I think
your consciousness.
I think we change. I think we've been many people before.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Too. I think ultimately, our sense of I think that continues indefinitely. But who can say? Eternal progress of the human soul, it says in spiritualism.
Yeah.
I think we go somewhere and stay there a short time, long time maybe, then die from that place as we get born here again, as someone set out, and then we live however long here, then die and go back again.
It's like reincarnation.
Yeah, so it's like the second death, isn't it? The idea that we die in the spirit world to come back to be born again.
Well, they say
here.
that when you go to the spirit world, you go to like a healing hospital, not like a hospital on the earth, and that you need to be healed, and then you can make contact and come back again if you're meant to.
And I'd imagine the coming back again to this world, I mean, there must be a process on the spirit side if that happens. I don't know. I've never really thought about this before. But when a person comes back and comes and finds a womb again to be born again into this world, there must be a process happening there of the equivalent of like a death. I'm sure people in the spirit world, and Silver Birch says this in some of the trance teachings, says things that they cry. We cry tears of joy when a baby's born in this world, and in the spirit world they cry tears of pain because they've lost somebody from their world into ours. So there is this idea.
Well, they do say that every time somebody dies, a newborn baby's born on that particular time.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. So I think that it works both ways, doesn't it, with the spirit world and this world. What about DNA? If you do a DNA test, it tells you your ancient ancestry. Do you take some DNA with you?
I'm sure you take memories and thoughts, and it depends what you've done on the earth plane, really.
I think the DNA, the physical DNA we have, is about the body, and it's here. It's a chemistry of the body, and it might give us some characteristics of personality. It might give us some, obviously gives us our physical qualities. May give us some behavioural things. I think some behaviour must be passed on through DNA. That's not been proven, I don't think. But I think a large part of ourselves is beyond DNA. So maybe there's a spiritual DNA of some sort that we take from life to life. And maybe it's not like DNA. Maybe it's different because it's a non-physical thing.
Well, all different strange bloods as well, isn't there, in DNA?
Yeah, our DNA is an interesting topic, but I think the actual physical DNA is about the body. But, how do we carry, I often think about how does experience get passed on? After you've reproduced, that's the end of your life, because any experience you have after that can't be passed on to your children because it's not in the DNA. So, but I think we do, obviously, we carry with us all the experience. Otherwise, the human experience would only go up to the point of conception, when you made a child. And all the experience that you've had after that point would be worthless, really, because it's not passed on in the DNA. But I think the whole human spirit gets transferred into the human form when we're born again. So it makes sense to me that behavior can't be passed on through the DNA, only physical characteristics. And our behavior is passed on through the spirit. And that's why consciousness has to survive the physical body. Otherwise, behavior can't happen. And also, I think it quickens evolution to the spirit. Human spirit quickens human evolution because it brings more information than the DNA can do. And that's why even with the vast quantities of time that have been there for the human body to have developed, then, it's got to be much more for the human consciousness to develop.
Yeah. Last question for part 1. Remember to like and share this video. And if you haven't done it yet, subscribe to our channel and like our Facebook page.
Yeah, so subscribe if you're new on, like I said at the beginning, and become a patron too if you're interested in this topic, because it does help us to do this, and also it helps with our work we're doing to build a centre and so forth. So have a look, and there's going to be the website's being redesigned at the moment by a really brilliant designer, me, and there'll be some whole lots of new informations up there on our website at psychics.co.uk, and you'll be able to see it this week. Hopefully next week it'll be all up there with some new stuff. So go and have a look if you can. And you can learn also there about the patrons and all the rest of it, what we're doing. It's a simplified, but there's tons of stuff on our website.
Right.
So, and also if you put any comments, you want to write on our Facebook page, if you'd like to be a guest and things like that, because we will do that type of thing too.
Be nice.
Nice to have some guests on in part 2 when Domenico's on, for example, and we can make it into a sort of a chat thing.
Yeah.
So coming up in part 2, we're going to have Domenico on board with us. And we're raising some funds for our centre. We haven't got a lot on it, but it's just gone new at the moment, and for GoFundMe.com/Hamilton Parker. And you can help us raise some funds for our new centre that we're hoping to open. We're getting quite a long way through the help from the patrons there. And don't forget to follow Dom.
Yes.
He's put his message up there, Dom the Italian Dad, because like I was talking about some of these incredibly good YouTubes he's doing at the moment. Particularly, you're doing a whole series at the moment on UFOs, and there's some really good stuff on there about that. So look for the Italian Dad, right? And you'll find Domenico there. You can we'll have to put some links in this.
He does incredible stuff.
But
I believe he's got one coming up tomorrow, hasn't he?
4:30 tomorrow it goes live, so you'll be able to go on the premiere. So if
do
you
go
check
and have a look. It's fantastic.
We're going to go on there. I'm going to go on the premiere and watch it as well, and it's good. I'm looking forward to seeing that one because he's actually got a bit. I think in that one he's got my voiceover.
It's got to be good then.
It's got to be good. Okay, last questions. Catherine saying, when you miscarry before you're at the 12 weeks, does it mean that your baby doesn't
No,
have a
not at
soul?
all.
It was told this. I was told this was true.
No, but sometimes women, it's not only nature letting go of that child. It's sometimes that baby comes to save your life.
Silver Birch, who was an interesting trance guide that spoke through Maurice Barbanel, said that the baby's soul doesn't enter the mother's body until the quickening.
It's about 5 months.
And I thought that seemed about logical enough, but who knows?
Perhaps that baby wasn't meant to come at that particular time, perhaps to save you, and that. But they do grow in spirit, even miscarriages and
often
babies.
Again, it comes through in mediumship, not just through me and Jane, but so often you see stories, you know, in our own experience too, that often a person's given a message of the baby they lost, who grows in the spirit.
All precious.
I mean, Doris Stokes really, you know, she lost a baby when she was younger, didn't she? And it really inspired her mediumship in many ways. So she had a real empathy with people that lost children. Yeah, and the new book out there, with Linda Dearsley's new book, actually is out there. Who wrote the original story? So she mentions us in it as well. Lauren saying, my grandmother is very ill and bedridden. She recalls seeing my grandfather and her father, who has already passed. Is it possible that they are there to comfort her during her time nearing death?
Well, nobody can tell you precisely when someone's going to die all the time, but obviously when they do come for somebody, it gives them a sense of peace.
I think the spirit people do draw close when someone's ready to go, but not always. Maybe they come close sometimes just to help you, like that. Some of the other stories we heard earlier, they were there like a presence.
Yeah.
But you know, people do come close. You know, and the time of death is obviously
I'm sure they come to comfort her.
A difficult time for everybody.
Yeah, and it's ones that are left behind as well. It's heartbreaking, really. It's really sad. I think death is a strange thing. You think of it.
It is. It really makes you think about life, doesn't it? Because we all take it for granted that this is almost going to go on forever.
Well, you and Domenico will be back, but I won't be back because you two will talk.
Well, so if you want, stay with us. We're going to put a little interlude up now, and we'll be back after this interlude, and I'll be having a chat with Domenico, and I'm going to have a cup of tea, and I think I'll have my pasty. So you can watch me eating.
This is the only man I know that can remember every place we've been to by the food he eats.
Okay. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Stay with us. We'll be an interlude now, and then we'll be back with Domenico just as an after casual chat afterwards.
Two intellectual men.
See you later then.
Would you like a personal psychic reading? Visit psychics.co.uk for quality international readings with Craig and his team of clairvoyants. Improve your life and find the path to a better future. You can book readings by phone or email. For a quality reading, visit psychics.co.uk now. They are the real deal.
Hi, I'm Craig Hamilton Parker, and you've seen myself and my wife Jane on our YouTube channel, in which we've been talking about all sorts of spiritual things and trying to do something important in the world. You would have seen that we've done a lot of spiritual work and particularly charitable work in India. We've given cows to old people, we've helped orphans, we've helped people that are hungry and kids that are hungry and beggars and so forth, all through many of the donations that have come through to us at the Hamilton Parker Foundation. But we want to do much, much more. And the most important thing, and that's where we're trying to raise money specifically here, is we want to open a spiritual centre. Now, we're not talking about religion. This is spirituality. Anybody that's followed us on our channel will know that we're trying to encourage people to become more spiritual. And you don't have to be religious. You can follow your own religion. That's fantastic. You know, you might gain from that. But we're trying to do something that will reach everybody on a spiritual level. Now, we've been doing things like meditation. You know, we're both mediums, so we're very interested in the idea of the afterlife and connection with the spiritual world. We also have been doing predictions about politics and things like that, which, you know, have been kind of helping people to think about these things. But also think about these things in a very spiritual way and understand that each of us has to awaken. But we need somewhere to do this. We need what we want to do, our first step for the first stage of a spiritual centre is to have kind of like a media centre. Somewhere where we can get all the filming done and present stuff in a very professional way, and also be able to have guests and people in and be able to just be able to go there, have it ready, set up, and we can produce much, much more work. And this also will give Jane and I more time to be able to do these things, to be able to get involved and spend our years doing this and to help make the world a better place. So anyway, you can help. So if you can give a donation to this page, it would be fantastic because it would help us. It doesn't have to be a lot, but I know that from many of you that have known us, some of you celebrities out there that have been to see Jane and myself as well, you can help. You know, give a substantial amount if you can too. Give a big amount, you know, because we're going to need much more than this. And, you know, we're not gaining from it. It's not for us. It's for everybody. So if you can help, if you're inspired by what we've been trying to do online, please do give a donation. And it would be absolutely fantastic for everybody. We can make the world a better place between us, can't we? Okay, well, thank you for joining us and thank you for giving your donations. Okay, see you soon. Bye for now. Hi, Domenico.
Good evening, Craig, and good evening, everybody.
Just me and Boo now. Jane's gone off to have something to eat. So, what do you think? Enjoy that?
The near-death experience is an interesting topic because, especially from the experiences that the people told us in the comment section, everybody had a different one. Somebody saw their dead mother or their dead relative. Somebody saw their pet. So it's interesting that you see that not everybody had the same. So
Well, there's a certain consistency to it, though, don't you think?
not exactly. Not exactly. These are the one in the comments, but if you look at all the other near-death experience, they all have different ones.
Yeah, I think there's a strong psychological aspect to it, isn't there? Like, you know, like I said about people see different religious figures, for example. You know, so why would they see different religious figures? And are they the real religious figures, or is that some kind of mental projection of some sort?
I do believe that religion and belief actually could make a difference in this experience.
Like some people.
If you remember, 2 years ago, I told you a story. It happened to me actually when I had the accident with the motorcycle. That
Right. Yeah.
I went in a coma, and I remember a dream I had. I still consider it a dream. Basically, I dreamed that I was in a field, like, you know, this magical field with forest around, but there is a green field in front of you. Not the wheat field like Theresa May,
Mhm.
but
Yeah. Classic Elysian fields.
yes. And there was a table, and I felt this presence next to me, but I couldn't see it. And this presence was somehow communicating with me. It wasn't talking, but I understood what the presence wanted me to do and was directing me to sit at this table.
Hmm.
At this table, there were other presences like mine, but you couldn't see the sex. You couldn't see if they were male, female, or whatever. You couldn't see from which country they were. You couldn't see anything. You could just understand that there were other presences sitting there with you. And
Yeah.
then the presence that actually brought me at the table started to go around the table and tell something to each to each, let's say, person. But you couldn't hear, not understand. You didn't know what the others were told. You just saw this presence disappearing all of a sudden.
Hmm.
And then this presence came to me and said, not said, but it made me understand that it wasn't my time yet. And at that moment is when I woke up from the coma.
Yeah. 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 A classic thing again, isn't it? That everybody seems to conclude that they're told that it's not their time and come back, don't they? So there are a lot of consistencies with all these experiences. That's what I think is in many ways so interesting. And it's cross-cultural. It's across, whether it be people, and it's not any part of the world, but it's also across history too, because like I say, that it wasn't reported as much as it is nowadays because people weren't resuscitated to the level they are now. But there's lots of accounts like that one I said about in Rome. I can't remember where. I think it was Roman soldier who was burnt at the stake, and they pulled him off at the last minute or something like that, and he'd been dead, and they resuscitated him. And the stories in ancient India and stories right the way back. So this isn't something new. This isn't something that people have been fantasizing about and then passing those fantasies on to other people. It's been something that has been there right from the very beginning, right from the earliest days, which I think gives it some credibility.
But then on the other side, there is an article.
Actually, just a minute, I could just say this first too. A lot of the scientists say, "Oh, well, this is just the brain's way of helping a person to cope with the process of dying." But nature's not kind like that normally. I mean, pain and death are things that there's no kindness to it. So I see no evolutionary reason why the brain should make dying an easier process. I mean, it might as well be as painful as possible because it'll force the person to live as long as possible if it's just about passing on our genetics and genes. So there's no reason that we should have a pleasant experience at the end of life if it was purely an illusionary thing. So that's one more reason I think it's real. So yeah, your thoughts?
The other point is that actually there is a scientific research that came out a few days ago about life after death, and science said that there is no possibility of it. And they talk about the near-death experience as a release of endorphins, like something like that. That's why your brain generates these endorphins or whatever it releases, and it creates these dreams. And each of us has a different one. But then my thought is that the near-death experience, it is just something that our brain creates when we are in a certain state. Like we are almost dead.
There's no need for it, is there? Like I say, nature is cruel. There's no need to make dying easy. Okay, you're finished. That's it. Die.
That's the thing. You are not. it's a near-death experience. It's not a death experience.
From nature's point of view, or just evolutionary point of view, it pays for humans to fear death as much as possible. So, because it makes them stay alive longer and makes the gene progress. So there's no reason death should have any pleasant ending to it, except it does, because that's what we get, these near-death experiences.
But then, there is the other theory that the moment before we die, we relive our life from the beginning at the same pace that we lived it. Or better, our brain understands it as the time is going slowly, but for us it's just a split second. So how about that point?
You're sort of coming back to this idea of eternal recurrence, yeah? Nietzsche's idea.
My theory on what happened when we die. We are not actually dying. It's like in a video game. We just restart.
Yeah, we start from the beginning again and start all over again. I read some fantastic book on that by forgotten the author's name, but Life After Death it was called, but I can't remember the author now. But his theory was that it's just like we just die and we go through it all again, until it just refines and changes every time. And every time we come down this path again, another thing changes and it's all slightly different. But I don't really think I can. The thing that I think kind of put me off that idea is like this idea of what they call the butterfly effect. That even if a butterfly was to flap its wings in a different reality, it would change so many things that everything would change. The whole existence would change completely. So eternal recurrence wouldn't be able to sustain through a similar life at all. The slightest change in anything that one does, if one relives things over and over again, the slightest change would have the same effects as like that idea of the butterfly effect. That, if in my life I did something different, I took a slightly different path, then everything after that point would be completely changed beyond recognition. So the idea of eternal recurrence, in a way, it can't be a sort of a reliving of this life. It would be completely different. So I don't think I can hold with that idea on that basis.
But you are making this assumption based on the idea that the reality we are living is everybody's reality. To make a stupid example, you are saying that this life is a multiplayer game in which different people are playing the same game. While I'm with the theory that we are living a single player game in which I am the player and the world around me, it's a reality made on purpose for myself. So like you, for me, you're just something created by the consciousness to create and generate experiences. And the near-death experience could be the moment in which you are able to connect with a different universe, and that's when you meet the people. And that's why, for example, I wasn't able to see the sex.
This is like the idea of the multiverse, isn't it? That things exist in multiverses.
Has been proven that there are multi-universes.
How many multiverses are there? If there's infinite numbers of multiverses, then it would be an infinite universe. For a multiverse like that to exist, we'd have to have an infinite universe, I would have thought. It couldn't be finite, or universes. And so that every single thing that could possibly happen does happen. There'll be no consistency to anything. There'll be complete chaos, really, because but in this reality, weird things don't happen constantly. There's laws of physics. There's laws of this reality has certain laws to it that prevent me sort of growing donkey ears now or something like that. So I don't know whether that would really hold water, really, the idea that we are moving through, our consciousness is moving through endless multiverses. These are just theories. I don't see anything that could support it.
Well, on the story of the...
we'll have to take some questions from people too, actually, a minute ago.
In a second. I just want to say this thing. The laws of physics actually have been proven not to be 100% correct. The laws of physics are based on our knowledge of physics. But there are planets out there that go completely against our law of physics. So even these still based.
But and who says the laws of physics are the only thing that exist? I mean, in a multiverse, there could be existences with no laws of physics as we know them at all, completely different laws as such.
Yeah,
You know,
there's nothing wrong with it.
complicated. You know, I mean,
Anyway.
could other multiverses exist without time?
Well, time is a human construct anyway. Let's start to get some questions. Well, the first one is Girl Sage that says, Mr. Parker, who is Tom the Italian dad? That's me.
Yeah. Well, my son-in-law, I suppose, is better close as, isn't it? Really,
Yeah.
married to almost married to my daughter with my grandchildren, and he's Italian. You might have noticed from the accent. Actually,
I'm a dad. I'm Italian.
me and Domenico have a sort of a chat afterwards, but you can always see his channel, Italian Dad, right? And
Yeah.
that's where we converge. You know, we work together. You see, Domenico often works in the background sometimes with some of the filming we've done, particularly when we go out. And we thought, well, it's nice to share it, you know, and he's got his own channel as well. So there you go.
And in my channel, I talk about tech reviews on a budget. And lately, I have a series called Odd Curiosities, in which I talk about the odd curiosities in the world, from ghosts to aliens to odd jobs and things like that. But lately, I'm concentrating the new episodes on all the theories, the scientific theories actually, about alien lives and alien civilization, why they haven't contacted us, alien abductions. What else am I talking about? Oh, the Dyson sphere and all these things about aliens and extraterrestrial beings. So it seems that the topic is going up. People are interested.
And we kind of help each other a bit. Like I do a bit of voiceover for Domenico, and Domenico does a lot of that production here for everything, you know. So
yeah, tomorrow at Talford actually will come out the new episode on my channel, and is about the Dark Forest theory. That is another theory why aliens haven't contacted us yet. And there is Craig's voiceover. Thank you very much for the help. That is amazing.
I did as scary a voice as I could for you.
That's great. You watch it tomorrow and you'll see it.
4:30 on your channel. I'll have to post it up on the patrons channel too.
Ginger tea. Do our loved ones have a physical presence and we can see them when we pass? So how do we recognize them when we pass if they don't have a physical presence?
Okay, does a dream have a physical presence? And yet you can dream of someone you know in a dream. So I would say that it's not physical in the sense that we know, because consciousness, awareness, it's not physical, is it? It doesn't have particles to it. It's not measurable. It doesn't have a weight. So I think, well, when we go to the spirit world, we're going into a world where consciousness is dominant as opposed to matter is dominant. So that's why we recognize each other. Because, you know, it's all like I describe it in What to Do When You're Dead. It's like a lucid dream in a way. And so that it's a malleable world. It's like you imagine you can change the world. You can change the environment around you. And who knows? We might take different forms over there because we're basically all beings of light at heart, you know. And we'd appear at an age, for example, that most suits us, you know. I'm very fortunate that I've been extremely good looking throughout my life, so I would probably choose any age. But you would probably present yourself as you were in your prime or when you were a child or whatever.
I think it's more about energies or something similar to it. Like, ever happened to you that you meet somebody and you feel that you got a connection with that person before even you know the person? Like, as Danielle says all the time, when Damien saw my mom the first time, his nonna.
Yeah. I mean, you know each other. I'm sure the communications in the spirit world it must appear to us to be completely natural, and yet it's inconceivable from this world, as it were, you know. And just like a dream is natural in a way, we know that we're dreaming, but it's so different to this world. So I think it would be completely natural when we get there. We think, I remember. This is how it works. And yet I don't think it's like this world in the same kind of way in many ways. And I think depending on how a person's evolved really too, some people might be able to live in a much more abstract world, where some people might need the reassurance of a physical world around them when they first pass over.
Lance says, if stories don't repeat, how could mediumship work?
Not sure I understand the question.
I think what it means to say, if history does not repeat itself, if there is no repetition in history, how could mediumship understand? Well, predict?
Yeah, I said mediumship would disprove the idea of an eternal recurrence, really, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Because we're connected with a different reality. I mean, I've thought a lot about this idea of eternal recurrence, and I think it's a great concept, but ultimately I think it's flawed. It just don't feel right to me at the end of the day. I'd love to be able to sort of, do it all again with the knowledge I've got now. Who wouldn't, And I get the feeling that the concept of the idea of eternal recurrence is kind of buying into that idea that, if I knew then what I knew now, I'd buy Google shares or I'd do this, I think it buys into that kind of fantasy of the person. And I just don't think, we can philosophize all we want, but just because we philosophize an idea doesn't mean it's true. And only if we can somehow prove it by either philosophical proofs or by scientific proofs or by experiential proofs. But as far as I'm concerned, I have not had any personal proof of an idea of eternal recurrence.
there is a book actually I wrote. Sorry?
Coincidences and things, I think, could point to sort of flaws in reality. I mean, I don't think reality is quite what we think it is. We take it for granted that it's a very superficial thing. But I think as our consciousness raises, we start to see reality in different ways. I mean, the very way we perceive the world can change. And also the way I think the world is much more malleable and can be changed according to our consciousness, that we attract things into our life, for example, we attract people into our lives, or I might see the world in a very different way to someone else might see the world. I can't prove that what I think is red to you or red to anybody else. You might see it with a completely different, color. I might be calling it red, but you might be seeing it as yellow. That's just as natural for you.
But that's the thing. Reality is subjective.
We can't prove it, can we?
Reality is subjective. The most stupid thing that my grandmother always said was, I might like pasta with potatoes and you might not. We cannot say it's good for everybody. Like, reality is not the same for everybody. But
excuse me eating my passy, but I'm very hungry today.
But to get onto the idea of the multiverse and the repetition and so on, you need to get into a specific mentality, and you should get away from what you understand of the reality and your idea and your knowledge as a psychic and a medium about all these things. You just need to move away from all that.
I do agree with you. You've got to try to open your mind to new things all the time, because I do think spiritualism in particular is a bit blinkered in the way it sees things. Its philosophy, to me, sometimes gets so simplistic that it's lost it. And I think this is little old ladies' fantasies sometimes. So we got to try to open our mind to bigger concepts. And for me, the one that did that was India. The Nadis, that they could see my whole future thousands of years ago and could see my life from thousands of years ago. And I put so many safeguards in place that it couldn't be trickery. I mean, that blew my mind, and it made me see things in a completely different way. And I'm sure my mind could be blown again and I could see things in another completely different way, because ultimately, I think when we realize when we have come to full realization, not the realization that some people think they've got realization, but when we really have the full realization, I think we just see the whole thing dissolves. The whole thing is just not only in the mind, but the mind, the body, the lot is Maya. The whole lot is illusion. But it has to be directly experienced. It has to be known. It has to be realized as opposed to known. This is what the knowledge is. It's understanding the nature of reality, not just intellectually, like philosophically, it's this or that, but you just know it, and it's beyond the mind. So it can't be expressed. It can't be described. It can't even be put into a thought. But when you do enter that state, you have access to all knowledge, so all knowledge, both empirical knowledge plus spiritual knowledge. So yeah, it's who knows? But this is the thing: realization over above knowledge.
Yeah, there is a book I wrote years ago. Actually, I should publish that. It's a story, like a romance. Long story short, there is a guy that every time he goes to sleep, he has a recurrent dream. The dream is that he's the last man on earth, and there is a cat only that is like his spirit guide in this world where he's alone. But then when in that world he goes to sleep, he comes back to the normal world and he lives a normal life. And then at the end, he decided to try and kill himself. He couldn't, but arrive at a point in which he's able to go to sleep, he sees a light, and he actually is a baby born.
Okay, so this is again these twists on reality again.
Yeah. Because
Philip K. Dick's sort of stuff. He was a great writer for all those type of things, science fiction writer.
I'm just trying to find some comment.
So put your comments, folks, because you can still interact with us now. I know we're kind of in a different sort of mindset now to when Jane and myself are having a chat with you. So it's a sort of slightly different sort of more conversational, I suppose, than normal. But
yeah,
any questions you got, to put them up. Any thoughts about these things? Any thoughts about the nature of near-death experiences? Are they real? Is it something? Does anybody have a contradictory view on this? Or how does it? How do we tie this in with the sort of things we've been talking about here?
Yeah, actually, I'm curious to know what they think the near-death experience is. I'd like to know from the viewers, what's their idea on the near-death experience? As we said, people have different ones. Some of them seem similar, some other seem completely different, but each of the people had a different one. People have read about other ones. So is it that a proof that there is an afterlife and we're going to heaven or hell or whatever? Or is just a mental state? Or is a connection to the main consciousness? Or is jumping to another universe for a second? Or you're actually getting to another planet and meeting with aliens?
Yeah. I see there's a few comments there, actually.
Well, Caroline talks about, do you go through the process of reincarnation until you have got whatever it is that you are placed here, right? It falls in line with your blueprint. I have seen and observed near-death experiences and seen grey-white mist floating above a family member head. Was my mom most passing. I saw her lift herself and then back.
I like this idea of a possible blueprint. This is what we were talking before about the idea of DNA, wasn't it?
Yep.
Spiritual DNA. Maybe we have a sort of a spiritual blueprint that gives some structure and form to what happens to us in life. And of course, I kind of, for a long time, it was hard to square the ideas of what spiritualism said, that there's an afterlife and that you don't come back. Spiritualism always kind of argues that, you come to this earth, you have this experience, you go to the spirit world, and then you progress, and you can progress in the spirit world. They didn't talk about reincarnation. A lot of spiritualists, for example, are very against the idea of reincarnation because they say, oh, that can't be proven. And yet, with some of the spirit guides said contradictory things. I hold with the idea, like Caroline's pointing out here, is that we do go through a process of reincarnation, come back to this world, relearn and go back to the spirit and come back and forth until we've kind of learnt whatever we mean by that. I think it's more like before we've awoken.
But then does this mean that when we go into the spirit world, we do not get all the knowledge?
No, we don't.
What we have.
The spirit people are just as ignorant as we are. Because that's what people seem to think, that when a person goes to the spirit world, they're all knowing beings. But that's not necessarily the case, And it makes me wonder too, just as we're evolving as a civilization here and so forth, if we can call it a civilization sometimes, but surely too in the spirit world, are they not also kind of still progressing? Are the limits to does that evolve just like we evolve here? We've evolved a society here, but in the early days of mankind, were the people in the spirit world sort of like cavemen type mentality, half human, half ape? Or the dinosaur world, was that what the spirit world existed of before? I mean, they're intriguing ideas, I think. But I think knowledge, I think the spirit world probably have more knowledge than us, but I think there's more than one spirit world. I think the spirit world is multi-level, so that we'll enter the spirit world that we're describing, of very similar to this world. It's a very similar sort of existence to what we have here. It kind of appears to obey similar rules, more fluid. But then I think we can have a second death, as it were, and we not be brought death and born back into this world, but death and born into a higher realm. And maybe we keep progressing like that into higher and higher realms, like the many skins of an onion, until finally we get to the very center of it, as it were. We get to the very heart of it, in which we become again absorbed into the totality of existence, like I was describing in the first half, about like dropping the salt into the water, that the salt is gone, but its flavor is still there. A multiple salt can be dropped in. It's we lose our form, but everything is still there. It's like it all exists, but in a different way.
But then imagine that to reach this final stage, let's say, it will take an infinite amount of time. You will continue to jump between all these different spirit worlds, and it's more or less like the idea of the multi-universe, that you're jumping between different universes.
Yeah, I think it probably could be like a multi-universe,
Where
I
you're
don't think
learning
it with physics, because we can't use physics to describe something that's beyond physics.
Actually, no.
I don't even know if mathematics could work either.
They have proven with a scientific experiment that two atoms can be in the same at the same time in two different places, proving the theory of the multi-universe.
Yeah, they know that within quantum theory. A place, I think, can be in two places at the same time.
Yeah.
So it proves omnipresence too. That we can, they talk about that when we reach higher consciousness, we can develop omnipresence. We can be in multiple places at the same time.
That's correct.
Quantum is actually the closest to the spiritual teachings of anything that's out there, really. It's incredible, really.
And in fact, we have Nana asking if we believe in the quantum theory, that the spirit in one body can jump through
quantum
time.
Leap theory. Quantum leap.
Quantum leap, yeah. In fact, she corrected herself. Quantum leap theory.
Mm.
Instead of dying and incarnating into another body. That's part of my theory with the multi-universe, actually. That is not only reincarnating in the same life, but reincarnating in the past or in the future. And actually, ever happened to you that you get some technology in your hand and you already know how to use it? Like, to me, happen often, and you see it by yourself, you know me, that I can get something in my hand that I never saw before and I already know how to use it. Like, I've already used it before, but actually I haven't. It's absolutely new for me.
There are the idea you've lived before again, isn't it? And all that you've been. I also wonder if we also could live. We think of time as always being now, but actually the brain works in such a way that we're always slightly behind time in a way, for our reaction time to what's happening to events. So we're never actually ever in the now. We can't be, because the brain can't be in the now, because it has to respond to the time it takes for the eye to go to the brain and all the rest of it. And similarly, there's been thoughts people have put forward before that maybe because of this, we maybe our consciousness lives slightly ahead of time. So part of us living slightly ahead, part of us is living slightly behind, but never actually in the now itself. And that the now is an illusion. And that we may have, our perceptions may be such that we're either slightly ahead or slightly behind. And perhaps that's where prophecy comes in, that some of us get into a sort of a state where we get into that mindset, which is always a bit ahead,
But back on the near-death experience, Ginger T is asking, Not all people have near-death experiences. Do you know why this is?
And actually, not all people have pleasant near-death experiences. This is something that's quite often ignored. 23% of near-death experiences are actually unpleasant.
Oh,
So maybe we've got to rethink some of the stuff, and it's not always that you step into the heavenly worlds, but maybe you step into other dimensions or other fear states or other states of consciousness that don't necessarily correspond with what we've been talking about tonight. I mean, that's something that needs to be explored, I think, definitely in the thinking for these things. And some people don't, like she says, don't have any
near-death experience.
near-death experience at all. They're just blank,
Kindred spirit asks, do we encounter people we were in conflict with or had unhappy experiences with in the spirit world? And do our feeling and attitudes towards them change? Good question.
Well, yes. I mean, from what I've seen, this is more like quite often people will say, I was married to two husbands. Which one am I going to be with when I go into the spirit world? I hated this one, but then I loved my husband, then I loved another husband. So there's all these conflicts. But we're talking here in terms of very earthly things. From what I've seen, the messages that come through from the spirit world so often, there tends to be a bigger understanding when they get in the spirit world, and a lot more forgiveness than in this world. So all the problems that might have tore people apart in this world, it seems from the messages that have come through, not just the ones that I've given, but other people give as well, that there's this sort of a much more of an understanding, and a less, not, for example, there's no jealousy, there's no attachment, there's no these sort of things. They seem to be lessened from from the messages that have come through. So that sounds like a sort of painting an ideal picture here, but it does seem to be the case. I found the whole thing, when I first got involved in mediumship, hard to grasp that people play cricket on the spirit side and things like that. To me, that seemed like mad fantasy. But actually, the more I do it, the more I realize that that's kind of what happens.
And that's how I imagine, actually, the afterlife. Playing tennis or cricket or having a sport car that
tranquil world
with.
I suppose if you had endless time, you see. I mean, I always wanted to be a painter in my life. I didn't want to do mediumship or anything like that. I was just, as a teen and right through school, all I wanted to do was paint. And I became quite an accomplished oil painter, doing all sorts of fantasy type of things. And of course, life didn't allow you to do that in the end, because it was just, you still had to earn a living. And when children came along, you really had to stop, and you couldn't do these things. But if I was in the spirit world, my goodness, I think I'd be painting perhaps all day long, forget, I spent 1,000 years painting, maybe, so who knows what it's like over there. Cricket.
I'll be making use of videos.
Yeah. But ultimately, all these things are just secondary to the awakening.
Caroline is asking again. Caroline is asking, so where does knocking come from when you are relaxing in bed and a knock can be heard on a door, yet no one is there? There is no alien but a form of communication from spirit world, or possibly your spirit guide. What does knocking mean? Thank you.
Well, it's certainly been around since the beginning, because when spiritualism first came onto the scene, there was the knocking sounds in the Fox sisters' house, and two little girls were getting knocking sounds around them all the time, saying it was from a tinker that was buried in the house, and they eventually found the body of the tinker in the underneath the chimney or something like that. So it was kind of proved in a way, and it was the basis of spiritualism, the knocking. So obviously the spirit world can knock, or it appears they can. They can, all sorts of stuff went on beyond that with table tilting and knocks on tables and things like that, and getting communications that way. How it's formed, I don't know, because how can a spirit thing ever influence the physical world, because it's outside of the physical? But maybe there's a mechanism to it. So sometimes it's a communication. Sometimes a knocking might just simply be the radiator making a noise. But there are definitely times when there is actual spirit communication, I think, through knocking. So perhaps it is the spirit world communicating. I think it does. And there's been plenty of interesting examples, like I say, if you look at the history of spiritualism, that definitely does seem to suggest that that definitely does occur.
Yeah. I always think it as the house is settling or the radiator.
Do you see the one that's just come up there, the meditation chamber, just commented? That's an interesting comment.
Where is it? There it is.
Yeah.
After my mom's husband died, we heard knocking on the door, very loud and distinct. You couldn't mistake it for anything else.
So I say it's really odd, sometimes. I mean, yeah, you get physical signs. I mean, I've described about when all the clocks stopped, when Nan's son died, and my uncle, and then how we had the messages from my dad and the smell of the perfume and things that, like I said about the jasmine and things. I mean, you do get physical phenomena, and I kind of think, these things usually happen at the time of a death, but not usually much later on, because I think when a person dies, there's still this physical energy that's around them as they pass to spirit, and that energy, that kind of not spirit body, but like the body's astral, the energy body that fueled the body, as it were, because I think the multi-layered the spirit is, but the physical body, there's still this shell, perhaps the astral shell people have called it, that can be used to make knocks and noises, because it's the bit of our spirit that connects the spirit to the physical body. Because I have a thought, that thought has to do something to make the brain work. There has to be some interconnection, and this is also what they use in voodoo and things like that as the shell, the shell for doing orders and things like that. So there's this in between, and it's that does the knocking, and perhaps is used when a person first dies, and why they at that particular time, just after a death, there's enough power to make a communication, but not once it dissipates, once that energy fades.
Ginger T says, I lived in a very old house once, 300 years old. I would hear knocking and doors closing, but nobody was there. It didn't scare me at all. I wasn't frightened.
Yeah. The older houses obviously have a natural spookiness to them, don't they? But they do seem to retain an energy. We're talking here now more in terms of the energies around us, aren't we, really?
Yeah, I always wanted to find a house where I can hear. No, actually, I remember I went to visit one of my exes. We're talking about 20 plus years ago now, in a house up the mountain in Italy. And the parents, old style people, they didn't want me to sleep in the same bed with her. So they let me go in the house that was next to there.
Or he's not going anywhere that we shouldn't be going.
The house was completely empty. There was just one bed in the middle of the room and nothing else. And I clearly remember spending the night away because I could hear steps in the house. The house was an old one. Imagine the old villages in Italy. So they are hundreds of years old. And I just started to hear these steps coming, but there was nobody. And I didn't sleep that night. I can tell you this.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I was hearing was a heartbeat, but it wasn't mine.
Yeah. My mum always had a great one, actually. She used to hear a breathing sound in the room. She couldn't understand what it was. And every night she'd hear this dreadful breathing in the room. Found out it was the curtains pushing with the window open, rubbing against the floor, but it terrified her. But, most of these things can't be explained, though. It's very hard to explain some of these odd things like this.
Caroline asked, she has some of her mom's ashes at home, and if that could be the reason of the knocking.
Yeah, and when it happens when you feel down, because I expect the spirit will, I'm sure they do come close to you when you're feeling low. It's very, very hard for them to communicate in a physical way, and it's very hard for them to communicate even through a medium's mind too, because you think of the mechanics of it. It's very difficult, and when you're doing mediumship, you've got to get yourself in such a fluid state of mind. It's not like you can just do it. You have to get into this other state of consciousness that not many people can do. So for the spirit world to communicate with this life, it's extremely difficult. There is a big gulf between the two worlds. But if anything comes through, it's often if our minds are connected. So if you're low, for example, or perhaps, and you're calling out to spirit, that's when they can come close. I think we build a bridge between the two worlds with our thoughts, really. And the physical manifestations are not as important as the inner communication that comes, because sometimes you can sense and feel and know the spirit's person's there, and know it's not fantasy, because you can more or less sense them. And it's almost like they drop little thoughts into your head sometimes that are just not your thoughts. I mean, it certainly works for a medium, but I'm sure that works for most people out there in some form or other.
So it's a bit like a professional sport, where you have to exercise a lot, and when you go to the main event, you use a lot of your energies, and when it finishes, you just need to go relax for some time.
I tell you, mediumship takes enormous energy. I mean, I'm having a month off from it at the moment. I'm not taking any bookings. Well, not many, just a few email readings and things, because it just burns you out. Even and I do quite a limited number. I used to do loads when I was young, but it really does sap your prana energy. It saps your life force, and sometimes you have to stop and let it rebuild again. And like you say, it's like anything, you train it and develop it, but it takes stamina as well, to be able to do these things.
Anyway, Chris Romero says that he was dead for 15 minutes, and he met family members that he never met, and then he was told it wasn't his time, and he had to come back.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's been some interesting cases, particularly with children, where they've met family members, come back and described them, and there was no way they could have known about that family member. They gave lots of details about, my mum's mum or something like that. Children in particular talk with complete innocence about having met grandma, and grandma said this and that and the other. And it's all been proven to be true. This is another really powerful thing sometimes, the messages you get, the things you're told. And, you meet not just the family members but you meet the family members you never met in life that passed on ahead of you, And there's been cases also where the child's gone into spirit and seen I think there was a case where they saw their mother in spirit, but not their father. And when they came, the child lived, but realized that, she saw the mother because the mother was dead, but the father was still alive, or vice versa. Those type of stories also kind of add credibility to this idea that these are real experiences.
Yeah, that's what I'll never be able to understand. The point when somebody, like, if you would come to me and tell me something that only my grandmother and I knew, how the hell would you know about it?
That's it. And that mediumship too is like this, I mean, I mentioned it before, but Jane did a fantastic one once when what was it she said to them? I think it was, the woman came through the door and she stepped through, and Jane just said to her, I think it was Bovril, come up again. I said the earlier story there. She said something like, the woman came through and Jane just said Bovril. And the woman burst into tears because that was the keyword, as it were, that they said, if I die and I want to prove it's me, I'm going to say the word Bovril, because no one will think of that. And Jane just said the word straight out, Bovril, to the woman. And of course, for her, she didn't really need a reading after that, because, it just proved without a shadow of a doubt to her that was her mother. So it's often the little things that are very important.
Yeah, you know how skeptic I am on these things, but I've seen it myself. There have been situations in which people have been told things that only they knew, And you're just like, okay, how could they know about it?
I mean, I came into this very skeptical myself, actually, Domenico. I mean, even when I was developing the mediumship, I still couldn't believe it was happening. You know, I couldn't believe that I could say something to someone and they'd take it. And then, so sometimes I'd even say I'd almost ask, because it was coming through my mind, I said, give me something that's completely crazy. And I'd say something to them that was complete, no way they could make it fit into anything, because I was always worrying, are these people just trying to say yes because they want to say yes? And sometimes the most bizarre things would come through and completely convince me in the end, because where did I get that information from? Your father was buried in a pink kilt or something like that. And these sort of things were being sort of accepted. And they tell the story afterwards about how it all happened and why those peculiar situations occurred. So I think it's very, very healthy to be skeptical, but not too skeptical, obviously, to the point where you throw everything out. Skepticism isn't about being narrow-minded. Skepticism is about being open, but sharp, I suppose.
No, I do get your point. It's something that I always say to everybody. Like, I'm on different groups of, for example, alien believers and UFOs, and I see people posting anything, absolutely anything, like a picture of Venus, Earth, and I can't remember the other planet seen from Mars, and everybody believes it's true when it's not. And it's not the point. It's not about I'm skeptic, I won't believe in anything. Is if you start to believe in absolutely everything that is put in your face. Like there is a group about paranormal I'm in which people are posting picture of ghosts, and you can clearly see that they are not ghosts and there is nothing. There is that rare picture that you cannot explain, but most of them like, who's this person in the reflection? And they're just like, that's absolutely you taking the picture and you can clearly see it.
I know. I used to write for Fate and Fortune magazine, wasn't it? Which was it called? And I used to do the ghost pictures in there. And to be honest, I don't think any of them were really believable. And some of the stories that people used to send in when I used to write for the Scottish Daily Record, and I used to write for the Woman's Own magazine and the Daily Mail and the People and things. I used to do these various columns where people would send their stories in. And frankly, sometimes they were just wanting to believe to the point that it was just getting silly, I mean, but then occasionally you get something that was really pretty mind-boggling. And so there's a lot of mixture of really intelligent stuff and really stupid stuff sometimes. And of course, magazines and things, they play into the daft stuff, don't they? When you look at some of these stories that they pull out in some of these magazines out there, they're pretty weak,
But then what I say is that it's because of these people posting absolutely everything and believing in absolutely everything that people start to just make fun of them.
Well, it undermines it all. I mean, Most Haunted was a case for that, in my opinion. I mean, that program just got completely daft. It just played into it. They knew it was fantasy. They knew there wasn't real mediumship involved, and then they palmed it off as being mediumship, and fed the world with so many silly misconceptions, and basically just pandered to what people's think the spirit world's about because they've seen it in Hollywood, and it does tremendous harm, really, to the truth. That's the problem with those type of programs. Not just Most Haunted. There was a whole number of them that just, because they're looking to make a TV program. They're not looking. Television is not interested in the slightest about the truth. You try to go on TV and do proper mediumship. They don't want that. They just want something that's very sensational. So I'm really pleased, though, that things like YouTube are giving myself and other mediums all around the world a platform where we can talk seriously about these things and give proper proof. Actually, I wish spiritualism would get more online with it, actually, because they seem to be miles behind the time. But no, it's quite nice without having daft producers and editors and things changing the agenda all the time.
Yeah, no, but as I said, start with skepticism and Try to see the logical side first. If there is no logical side, try with scientific. If there is not even scientific, then you start to see.
Yeah. If there's an ordinary explanation, that's it probably first. But they do it the other way around, don't they? You know, immediately it's a ghost. But then just a minute, you couldn't prove it's not. Lola's just asked, do mediumistic sessions in the UK, group ones. I used to do them a lot, but I don't really do them now. No, I do enjoy doing them, but it's just not practical. Because traveling out to people and doing sessions and things I used to love doing it. I used to do them, you know, groups of 15 people, but it just gets a bit too much.
Unless we can start again if we open the.
Well, actually, when we've got the studio up and running, once this coronavirus is out the way, one of the things I'd like to do there, Domenico, is to have we can set a setup a bit like they had on John Edwards. You know, where you have people sat in like an audience, so we can film it, and Jane and I give demonstrations to the audience. So people watching this channel, for example, could be invited to become members of the audience, and then we could do these group mediumistic sessions, which, you know, I'm always my best personally when I'm actually on a platform or on the stage, and so is Jane. But you know, doing the theatres and things are one thing, but doing it small and putting it online here would be fantastic, and people can really see live what mediumship's about. You see, the problem when you see it on telly, it's been edited, so all the mistakes are taken out. And one famous medium, I was told by one producer, he said, well, you do it straight away, Craig, you give the evidence immediately. But so-and-so, when he comes on, we had to film and film and film until he got it right. I said, well, that's not right. You're editing it to make it work, you know? So mediumship needs to be seen live, and then we could do that ourselves. We could do that with an audience that we could pull in from the YouTube channel here, and even give messages to people at home at the same time.
Kindred Spirit says, can our loved one in the spirit world have any influence or impact upon what happens to us in the material world? Because we are living in a material world.
Well, yes, of course they do. You know, because I mean, so I think if you get a good, powerful spirit message, you might change what you were going to do. You might even, you know, save your life or something like that. A message can be that important that it's bound to have an impact upon what happens to you in the future. I don't know if they can influence the world around us as such. I mean, can they stop things or make things happen or do things? I think their ability to change the material world is not much, because, you know, you've got no body to influence anything with. But I think they can certainly influence on a mental and spiritual level.
Yeah, no, I'm not medium nor a psychic, so I cannot answer that question. I give myself off. Anyway, this was the last question of the evening.
It was a nice little chat. I hope everybody enjoyed watching me eat my pasty and listening to us have a just an after show chat we kind of have.
Chitty chat.
So if you like the program, do please share it. Particularly on Facebook, do a share, and then others can see it.
Yes, actually, if you cannot support us or don't want to support us monetarily with money, your support by clicking the subscribe button and sharing the video throughout Facebook groups, Facebook pages, Twitter, whatever social media you use, and let other people know that about this event every Friday night.
And drop in on us on the Italian Dad Show at 4:30 tomorrow, Saturday, because you'll be able to watch the one we've been talking about earlier with the strange curiosities.
The Odd Curiosity series is not alive, so do not expect to see me talking like this. It's a video that it's published tomorrow at 4:30, but it's premiered. That means I will be there, and if you have any questions about the episode, I'm going to answer the question in the chat. And actually, if subscribe to Craig, like the Facebook page, check my channel, subscribe to that one too.
Lot to do.
Because actually, I have a plan for the Odd Curiosity series for the Alien, the Alien special, let's say. All the episodes are getting through the different scientific theories to then get to a final point that is the full theory on who are we and who are the aliens out there. And the last episode is going to be a big one because it's a theory that I've studied now for 25 years, even more, in which I will tell you my point of view on that with all the possible proofs and show you how all the religions in the world are actually connected with each other in a way or another, or they use, obey the stupid example, the snake. It's the most common animal in all the religions and beliefs in the world. But each of them put it in a different way. Some says it's good, some says it's bad. And in that video, you will understand why some says it's good and some says it's bad. But to know that, you need to subscribe to my channel and follow up with the episodes. And
Yeah.
even
And
writing
we'll see you all. I'll be on there hopefully 4:30 Saturday. So I'll watch the premiere with you and watch your questions. And we can all interact. I'll be on your side with you guys. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all again soon. So we'll
Thank
say
you very much.
bye
Buonanotte.
for now.
Ciao.